I've been learning Apache. I'm Hickory Apache. And as I was dwelling on this conversation for today, I've been watching a lot of the chairmen of my tribe having conversations about giving water away and how water is free and should be clean to everyone, and we have a huge responsibility to keep it clean. We want to start by acknowledging, Indigenous people who lived here who kept track of this water for a very long time, making sure that for the next 7 generations that everybody had what they need. Here in Denver in particular, the Cheyenne and Arapaho lived here, and we just want to acknowledge that from the very beginning. We're here today because the city is failing. There's no doubt in anybody's mind, I think, that's driving around that we are failing those experiencing homelessness. I ran for city council here in Denver in 2015 in this exact area where we are right now and where many of these encampments are. And I ran on trees, trash, and transportation, and I talked about how we needed to have compassion for people and that we needed to protect our air quality, we needed to protect our water quality. And what I see now is the city has only built a handful of public restrooms in 5 years. When I see no public restroom signs, I see no blacks welcome. That same kind of bigotry that happens to people because of circumstance that's sometimes beyond their control is something that we need to work on diligently as human beings. The trash service that we're going to do today is something that we've been asking for a long time. These encampments have waste, just like you have waste at your house. And what happens? The city comes and picks it up. You pile it up, you put it outside, they take it away. They don't do that for people. And all these people don't have access to refrigerators. They don't have access to homes and safety. And so what they have is single-use food. And all that single-use food leads to single-use plastic, and it adds up and it builds up. And the city, it seems to me, is using this as an opportunity to talk about how terrible the camps are, so they can go in and sweep the camps. I want to make it very clear the sweeps are doing nobody any good. We're moving them on to where? The camping ban has been found unconstitutional. I don't know if any of you know this, but the camping ban that was instituted by Albus Brooks here in this district is now illegal, and yet they continue to enforce it as though it's not. Beyond that, the Center for Disease Control has made it very clear that sweeping the homeless during the time of a pandemic is not the appropriate thing to do. Despite that, our mayor has made the decision to continue doing these types of activities. I have a hard time not making a comparison to Donald Trump and the administration. If they're unwilling to follow the law, then what is the point of the law? If Mayor Hancock isn't willing to follow the law about what's unconstitutional, then he shouldn't be empowered to do that. The Denver Homeless Out Loud has been working very hard for a long time to push Jared Polis to fill the vacant apartments. I know that safe camping is something we've been fighting for a long time, but let's be clear, we want housing first. The Party for Socialism and Liberation did a study and found more than 1,200 empty apartments in 10 buildings alone. There are homes for these people, there's open space for these people, but we don't have leaders who have the courage to put them in their homes, even though they have the emergency ability to do so. So we want to stop to the sweeps. We want everyone in housing. We want to support people in sheltering in place. How in the world is someone supposed to shelter in place when they have no home? We have no guidelines on this, and we've asked repeatedly from the public health departments for this. We'd like to protect people in shelters by not concentrating them. They've done tests out here during COVID of people who are living on the streets who have 0 cases of COVID. If you put people into a room, a giant room that's circulating air with sick people there, that's a death sentence for many. These people already have compromised immune systems because of trauma, because of neglect from the government, and because they're malnutritioned. Just this morning, I was giving water to a man who said he hasn't washed his hands in a day. They're telling us to wash our hands 5 times an hour. They're not providing that to anybody. I saw someone here yesterday who was washing their clothes in this hand washing station. People have the right to access water for their own health and well-being. We want to make sure that we leave no one hungry. We know that clean water grows food, and we know that food is what powers us, and so we need that. We want help from Jared Polis to ban evictions. Now more than ever, with more than 500,000 people on the verge of eviction in Colorado alone, if they think these 3 encampments that we're going to go to today are a problem, wait till November. Wait till next year. You know, all this plastic, just so you know, comes from oil and gas. And at every step along the way, it poisons our water and leaves it toxic. We have a deep responsibility in the Headwater State to provide clean water and to protect our water. All of this garbage ends up in the street, and it ends up in our gutters. And we're in the middle of monsoon season, which means it's going to pack up our gutters. They pull out hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And that doesn't even account for the microplastics that you drink in your body. It's time for this to stop, and I believe that water protectors are uniting all across the world. And being a water protector means protecting water quality, and it means making sure everybody has water. And so I had this idea that if the city's not going to lead them, we have to do it for them. We have to show them the way. That is what real leadership is. And so I've worked in the events industry for a long time, and I called up my friends in the events industry, and I said, we know how to do this, and we're unemployed right now. There's no festivals, there's so many porta potties. We know how to run camping. We know how to do this safely. And so I'm just so pleased that I could partner with my friends Matt and Molly and their business around giving water. Today we're going to clean 3 encampments. Today we're going to clean their bottles. Today we're going to clean their hands, and we're going to make sure they have access to water. And what I can tell you is tomorrow it won't be there. And tomorrow people will undo what we did. But when we stand together and reset the slate, it makes it easier every time to do it again. If we ignore it, it gets worse. And so with that, I just want to invite Molly and Matt up here to speak as well.
Thank you. Well said.
No, I want to start over. No, I'm okay.
Coming at the end. So what Molly's doing now, anybody here work in the music business at all? Right on, there's a lot of us in the festival. So what she's doing right now is resetting that microphone with a wipe and then putting a new little sanitary microphone condom on there. Practice safe microphoning. And then she's going to talk.
All right, so I just wanted to talk briefly about the strategy that we're using today to introduce this clean water system to our community. There's an implementation strategy called tactical urbanism that's often used in transportation. Often advocates of multimodal transportation will take the opportunities to do these short-term, inexpensive, temporary installations that are meant to show how we can improve the safety and the accessibility and mobility for biking, walking, and transit in our communities. The purpose of it being short-term is that it allows us to collect data, figure out what's working, what isn't working, and then it's an iterative process where we can then come back and do another installation that works better. And so we're going to take the opportunity to do that, to do a little bit of data collection. We're going to take this system, Matt will talk about the system specifically, but to bring this into our community and see what works about the soap versus the hand sanitizer, how we can use this water system for sanitation and for hydration. We'll collect some information and then have this be both a learning opportunity for our own community, but then also that we can share with other communities around the country so that everyone can learn and start to be providing the sanitation and hydration for everyone in our communities.
Molly and I share the same household. She's my partner, so I don't need to wipe the microphone down. A minute ago, a bunch of people raised your hands if you worked in the music industry or festivals or things like that. We learned our chops there to a large extent about how to create temporary cities for people. And so it struck me, I met Ian on a bicycle. Molly was the director of Bike Denver, And then I ran a festival called Tour de Fat for New Belgium, about 100 festivals around the country where people got together on their bicycles, took to the streets, and it was the most fun kind of civil disobedience that led to bike lanes and money that I ever saw. I thought it was a pretty interesting way to do activism. I grew up in a family of activists, and a lot of times it was about anti-war, but then there was Mother Teresa said, I wouldn't go to an anti-war rally, but I would go to a pro-peace rally. So I started to kind of learn about that positive version of getting people together around a cause, even if it's life and death and emergency and trauma and you know, in the case of indigenous rights, of the Holocaust and Black Lives Matter, you know, it's as serious as it gets. But still, inside of all of us, we've got to figure out a way to keep that that positivity. So I left producing festivals and created this company with my wife, Majestic Collaborations, to do the art of mass gatherings. Our friend Tori over here came out and saw an installation we did at Civic Center Park. Oh wait, Tori's your colleague, beg your pardon. With the masks on, we all look like our spirit animals from like birds. Okay, so a year ago, we thought there was this Art of Mass Gathering says, let's use festivals as a classroom for emergency preparedness. We built temporary cities, these wastewater power systems that we're building for these 25,000 person events. Same stuff. When Molly and I were at Standing Rock and there's 15,000 people, we recognized that it looked a lot like a refugee camp, a lot like a power damaged city, and a lot like a festival. And so these skills that we learned about wastewater power systems were coming in really handy for helping try to keep that camp safe. We also noticed there's a lot of sickness. Molly got the worst stomach flu I've ever seen. It was probably from either the bathrooms or from using shared utensils on the food lines, you know. So there's systems that help this stuff out. There's systems of cleaning those areas. There's systems of making some people food servers, so they're the only ones touching the food. Those are sorts of things that we've learned, you know, through the years. But also, it wasn't the place for me to just come in as, you know, the white guy and tell everybody how to run wastewater power sanitation. It really had to be done in a collaborative way. So I recognize that's the place where I need to learn a lot and not just talk a lot. But for now, I'm going to talk because I did get a chance to make a lot of mistakes producing these festivals. They say an expert's somebody who's effed up a lot of things and remembered what they did wrong. So I'm going to teach you a few of the things I learned quickly. All right, we made these water towers at the festivals, and so people could get fresh water. The hoses would taste pretty crappy unless you used a potable water hose. We figured that out. So these white ones tend to be that. I just got this hose yesterday, and that one is potable water certified. So if you are, you know, going to be watering people, get ones that are potable. So it would you'd run fresh water to this, and then people can fill up water. This, in the time of COVID, we want to make sure that we are sanitizing that. So today, when we set up, we'll be using a peroxide solution in between to sanitize the materials. We also want people to sanitize their hands. And here's a little hand-free. Who's a musician here? Makes this kind of poor and creative, but here's a sanitizer pump, and there's one for soap. My brother Jeremy has worked at festivals in Red Rocks a long time. He brought out this system here. This is if you don't have water from a city. It has an electric pump. This is pretty cool. This is a lithium ion battery pack. It'll do 100 watts for 2 hours. This is a water key. You need these for opening up, you know, water on the side of a building with no knob. Other things that come in handy at these demonstrations or a long time out in the field, just for yourself, personally. These are nice. If you've got female anatomy. What's that?
What is it?
This is a thing to pee in. It's a urinal. Inside of it, this works for guys. If you're a female anatomy, this thing is nice to have when you're outside for a long time. Going into bathrooms is a bit of a hazard. So That's just a good thing to have around for yourself. Be a great thing to give people who are unhoused so they can control where that stuff goes. It's hard to pee into a small water bottle or something like that. So that feels like a pretty good thing to have, to know about. I think that's about what I wanted to talk about today. Ian, please come back. Ian's going to reset this microphone.
All right, back on the mic again. So I'm going to do a little bit of sharps training with you. Has anyone here ever had sharps training before? So what sharps training means, when we're cleaning up these trash, there are often people on the streets who have medical needs and need needles. Or sometimes they have substance abuse issues and they use needles. So what I'm going to be doing is, when we decide on the groups, I'm going to find some people who feel like this is a task they would like to take on. But the most important thing that we can remember is, this is all about harm reduction. There's inherently a little danger in picking up a needle. But what we can do is, we always want to pick them up in the middle, very carefully in the middle. And you always put the needles down. You put the sharps down into this. They're pretty simple to operate. One of the most important things to notice is, like, if you're digging around in a pile of trash, don't do that with your hands. It's more important to spread things out with your closed-toed shoes to protect yourself from sharps. If you don't feel comfortable in that, or you come across a very large cache of these, sometimes that happens, I'm going to be giving my number away to everybody, but also on some papers here. If that's the case, I want you to call me, and I have the training to come with one of these larger containers and to contain that. I want to say thank you to the Harm Reduction Action Center for providing these for us. They provide clean needle exchange for people who are living on the streets. And again, this is about harm reduction. We're trying to improve people's public health. And the last thing I want to say, and I want to everybody just to close their eyes for a second. And I want you to think about your first memory of water. For some people, it's playing in a river. For some people, it's a puddle. But what you know is that water is sacred, and that for 9 months you were carried in water inside your mother. Water envelops us and gives us all life. Now I want you to repeat after me. I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams.
And my ancestors' wildest dreams.
You really are, because you're here today. Our race, our species is only here because we've worked together and collaborated to provide clean water to each other for a very long time. And again, I want to say, Jared Polis put the people in housing. To our leaders, get it together. If the United Nations comes here and tells us that here in the richest nation in the world, that we have camps that are worse than any sort of internment camp, we clearly have work to do. I'm telling Mayor Hancock to turn to us, festival promoters, people who have the expertise in safe camping. Ask us to help. We do want to help, and we do want to keep people safe. And the last thing I want to do before we break up into groups, we're going to say it 3 times. I'm going to say clean water for, and you're going to say all, okay? Clean water for.
All.
Clean water for.
All.
Clean water for.
All.
Thank you.